Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Necromunda video, where today I'm going over the new Necromunda Hive Secundus box, which was given to me by Games Workshop. But before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video. Did you like it or not? And remember, all things goes to Games Workshop. They gave this to me to review for free. But as always, I aim to be honest, impartial, and constructively critical. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below, and a affiliate link on my games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support as well. But yeah, today I'm going over something slightly different compared to Kill Team, which is Necromunda, which is another skirmish game. I actually originally started playing Necromunda back with the original Zone Mortalis release, when you had that Khorne warband versus the Malstrain Forces. I was the Khorne guys, of course. But I haven't really picked up since then, and I was tempted by Hive Secundus, and then Games Workshop gave it to me. So I'll be going over the box as well as the terrain and some other stuff as well. So let's get into it. So inside the Hive Secundus box, which is about £105, well, it is £105, you get quite a lot of stuff. It's effectively kind of like a new edition / expansion of Necromunda, but also a whole box game in itself. So inside you get all the terrain and templates you need, because inside you get the Malstrain Genestealer, so you get 6 of those. You get 8 Malstrain cultists to use, which are the Hive Scum. Then you also get 2 sprues of 4 new Van Saar. And then you also get some plastic terrain, which you can use to represent doors and hatches while they're exploring this new ruined Underhive. You also get all the bases you need to play, as well as dice, all the cards needed for both teams, as well as a rulebook, instructions as how to build everyone, tokens to use, card tokens, as well as 2 double-sided card maps, like layout boards to use for, well, basically to play around on this 2D board with 3D doors. So as a concise one-box game, it's actually pretty good because it has effectively everything you need to play this game if you don't want to expand it further. But it's got a really good set of building blocks to get started with. Because I also forgot to mention, you also get a sprue of 2 of the new Spyre hunters to use as well, with one of their little bat things as well. But considering it's only £105, you actually get quite a bit. And it's very impressive. I know people get upset that it is kind of like a 2D environment, as well as Necromunda kind of basically being better when it's way more 3D in terms of having more terrain. But considering this is just like the basis and starting point for getting you into the game, I think it's really good. And compared to the last box they had with the Palanite versus the Khorne gang, I think that's a nice improvement over that, because you get some more variation and some more interesting miniatures to play around with. Diving into the rulebook for a bit, it's weird because the Necromunda Hive Secundus book basically has all the core rules for Necromunda, if you weren't aware of those already. But it also has all the rules for playing in this new setting. So all the teams and factions are designed specifically for Hive Secundus, and the only downside is if you want to expand them outside of normal Necromunda games, they even tell you in the book you need to tweak them to make them work. So it's all up to you, like it's still standard Necromunda where it's players still have freedom to tweak things, but they recommend you play all the new stuff in the current setting. But if you want to port them to you've got the desert open place with all the vehicles, you can play that, or just normal Necromunda, you can do that as well. For the narrative, this setting is whereas Ash Wastes was more the outside of Hive Primus, and Necromunda itself is set on Hive Primus, Hive Secundus is literally a different hive on the planet. What happened here was basically got infected by a Genestealer cult, and then just got bombed from orbit, nuke them from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. But instead of just using normal nukes, they use gravimetric radioactive bombs that made the hive collapse on itself. But instead of killing everything, it just made everyone survive in radioactive pain. And what it goes over, they're quite quick to establish this, which is what I like. The cult survived, but as a result of the gravity and the radiation, the Genestealer cult has been heavily mutated. So instead of just being normal Genestealer cults, they're actually dying mutated Genestealer cults, which is really interesting. And they establish early that it's sending out a hive fleet, like the psychic message that normal Genestealer cults do, that draws people in with this hypnotic gaze. But when it's being read and interpreted as if it was a Tyranid signal or normal a normal Genestealer cult signal. It's actually telling the Hive fleet to stay away because the entire cult is just poisoned and mutated and like a diseased animal, not worth picking up. But interestingly, it goes even further into it. So already, like if you've been reading the Warhammer community articles, you know, like the reason Hive Secundus was basically blown up from orbit was because their tech priest was found to basically be mutating and experimenting on the Genestealer cults to try and find a weakness. And while he was dead, basically it's theorized that he might have actually found a weakness to this specific cult change. So the Hive fleet, well, the Genestealer cult, the Malstrain cult, just keep resurrecting him in a Genestealer like corrupted way to try and basically reverse what he's done, or maybe try and cure themselves. And now you have basically people going into this Hive because it was basically more the refined version of Hive Primus. It has all this forbidden archaeotech and STCs that still will exist. So now you have other Necromundan gangs going in either to try and clear out the Malstrain or just find these new technologies to either sell for themselves or make their own gangs better. But it's really fun and a nice setting. And what I like when you compare it to like Ash Wastes and the, you know, Hive Primus setting for Necromunda, the narrative is still really strong and really deep. Everything kind of like links together and makes sense narratively. Like they're not just moving away. Those places still exist. It's now just turning the focus somewhere else on the planet because, you know, we kind of forget how huge Hive cities are and how big Imperial planets can be, especially Necromunda. But it's a really fun, nice exploration. And for this Hive fleet, well, for this Hive, you have the Saar trying to basically route out the Hive Secundus for STC that will help survive, well, help improve the survival of their gang because they're all dying from radiation. Whereas the Spyre hunters are literally just going in there, maybe finding STC, but killing really rare and exotic beasts, basically all the Malstrain Genestealers, to kind of just level up themselves and bring more renown, which is really cool too, and bringing back a nice rogue trader element we haven't seen for a long time. So going back to more of the rules and the box contents, so it shows you what all the tokens show, as well as the box contents with the range ruler, templates, arc measurement, doors, dice, blast markers and flame templates, as well as all the operatives too. It breaks down what important vision is because basically, even though they're on round bases, they still have arcs, which is nice. It covers all the dice you use, as well as, you know, your normal d6, scatter dice, injury dice, and firepower dice, as well as fighter cards. And then you've got general core rules. So what I really like is how they establish everything upfront and clearly, which is something I actually miss from Kill Team. So they actually cover takebacks and changing one's mind. It kind of does how most people do. So you're allowed to take back and change stuff unless dice have been rolled, because once those dice have been rolled, it's been set in, which is really nice. They also go into in-depth about measuring distances and how arcs and line of sight works. Then the cover section is actually really, really nice. It goes into a lot of how to break down cover and line of sight way better than actually Kill Team does, which is funny considering Necromunda is a more narrative-based game. But it's really cool showing, like, even if you've got like guns sticking out, if you're just basically majority covered, you're not visible to someone because it's just not enough of you to be seen. But it's great how they break it down, showing like the common principles you will come across when you're playing the game. And it's nice it's established early and clear. Then you have fighter status. So this covers two main things. Your fighters are either standing, which is how they will normally work, or prone. So prone is you basically put the model on their side. So you just tip them over to represent them either being pinned, so like they've been hit by a blast or shell shocked, or injured, where they basically are reduced to 0 wounds and collapse on the ground. It also covers conditions showing like ready, broken conditions, flesh wounds, as well as being out of ammo. Because Necromunda is a more in-depth narrative game, it actually shows these status people don't just have unlimited rounds, their guns could jam, anything could happen, and it's pretty much covered in Necromunda. You also get a breakdown of general characteristics and principles. So if you play Kill Team /40k, you'll know the normal stuff. You've got movement, weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, wounds, initiative, and then attacks. Then you also have leadership, which is just your leader, operative standard leadership. Cool, which represents their ability to stay calm. Willpower, which is just how tough their mental fortitude is. And intelligence, which is how smart they are. So everything highlighted in the blue is generally checked on the roll of a 2d6, and you have to roll equal to or higher than the number shown, or it's a single d6 for everything unhighlighted. And they also show the minimum and maximum stats you have which is a nice ceiling for basically if you wanted to rope in your own Necromunda and stuff, how that would work. But it's all really clearly explained, and yeah, it's actually pretty clear. I was quite apprehensive at first until I read it, and then I was like, oh no, it's just basically 4/3 new characteristics, which are just kind of like it's like basically a tabletop RPG. Then for weapon profiles, you basically have either short and long range. So it's the weapon's short range and the maximum range, of course. Whether it gets modifiers to short or long range, which is what the S or L applies. So basically for this long layers, you only get the benefit of +1 to hit from long range. Then you've got armor penetration, which is how it modifies basically your target's armor save, damage, ammo, so when you're rolling your ammo check to see if you're running out of ammo, and then what traits it has, such as plentiful, so it's easy to find, as well as availability and cost. And then it also has a breakdown for fighter cards showing how you can fill out your fighter cards, because basically every operative you make is a custom character, and it shows you how to do that, because you get so many cards to basically do at your heart's content. Although you do have Yak Tribe, which is an online resource for making your own warbands and teams, which I'm sure will basically happen once this is released. Like maybe in a month, you know, Yak Tribe will up to date. You also have the standard rules for gang creation. So generally if you're playing a campaign, the starting budget is 1,000 credits, although your GM may increase that depending on what everyone's playing. But it also covers if you wanted to play skirmish games, so just one-off games of Necromunda, and they recommend between 1,250 credits to 2,000 credits, and then just, you know, how your gang is created, including like hiring extra fighters. When it comes to activating operatives, you can either activate a single ganger or group activate 2, where basically group activate is equal to their number in the brackets. And then you can either do a simple action, which you can do more than once of, and it just costs one of your 2 activation limits. Basic actions, which you can only do once per activation. Double actions, which basically count as 2 activations, well, 2 actions for your activation, and then free actions, which don't cost you anything. So for some example actions, you have move, charge, where a charge allows you to charge within engagement range. So you can't be, normally you can't be within 1 inch of enemy operatives, but a charge allows you to, and then you get to do a free fight action. You have crawl through ductways, which is a double. Take cover, shoot, aim. So you can basically, if you're standing in a right position, you can aim and then shot to get +1 to hit. Coup de grace, so it's basically if someone's proned, you basically do a glory kill, which is pretty nice. Operate doors, and then you've got the rest as well as actions what standing and engaged fighters can do, which is basically fight and retreat. Then proned fighters who can either crawl or like blind fire or reload. So there's a lot of variations to what you can actually do in Necromunda. Then you've got how damage is resolved, representing armor penetration, what save modifiers you have, your toughness, as well as inflicting damage, and what happens when you get injured, either going out of action, serious injury, or flesh wound. Because when you are injured, you roll an injury dice and you're either out of action, serious injury, or flesh wound. Falling onto that, if you don't die, you could get a lasting injury when you go out of action, and there's a lot. As you can see on the injury table, you could be very lucky when you're rolling your 2d6 and get lesson learned, but you could get memorable death, critical injury, humiliated. There's so many, and it's very, very fun. If you're playing a game of Hive Secundus, as I've mentioned before, as with Ash Wastes, you are playing in a different setting, and the book says basically factions designed for Hive Secundus are for Hive Secundus, but you will need to adapt them and port them for different games. But you've also got like hangers-on and hired guns who won't go into Hive Secundus because it's like a radioactive collapsing waste zone, unless they specifically say they're allowed to, which I'm sure we'll see in the future. Because it's such a more dangerous place, you have more stuff like archeo loot to find, rarer things, as well as different levels of territory, because you've got like level 1, 2, and 3. So the deeper you go, the harder it gets, but the more reward you get as well. So you're kind of rewarded for playing in the more difficult areas, basically. For the specific factions found inside the Hive Secundus box, you have firstly the Spyres, who can be selected when you make a gang with the Saar Tech Hunters. So as you can see with the leader, they are quite cool and veteran hunters, but they have interesting thing where they can have glitches in their suits. But the cool thing is about Spyre hunters is the more kills they get, they can level up their suits. So their suits are these weird archaeotech designs that get better the more they kill. So you're actually incentivized to do so. They are quite tough and formidable, but they still only have 3 wounds. So you have to be quite careful with who they fight, although they do cost a lot of credits. Then for the Vansar Tech Hunters, you've got the Specialist, who you can upgrade as pictured, as well as taking a Carotid Prime, which is an exotic beast. When it comes to building a Malstrain Force, it's kind of different. It's all based upon the mission you're playing. So sometimes you only have 3 Malstrain points, some missions will give 10, some will give even more. So building a Malstrain Force you do per game, and you get a fixed number of points, and depending on the level of board you play on, you are limited to how many Malstrain Genestealers you can bring. So for example, if you're playing level 1, you can only bring 1 Malstrain Genestealer per game. If you're playing level 2, you can bring 3, level 3, 4, and the Brood Zone, you just have an unlimited number, representing you getting deeper and closer to the head of the cult. A Brood Scum with up to 40 credits of equipment is 1 Malstrain point. A Tyramite, which is the giant flea, which isn't actually a Genestealer cult, it's just an infected insect, is 1 point, and then you have a Malstrain Genestealer, which is 3 points. And then when you look at the Brood Scum, it goes over the variety of equipment you want to give it. So you could have just a naked Scum with a shotgun and axe, or you can flex it out, you know. Oddly, photo goggles are the most expensive, but if you have that, the only other thing you basically have is a stub gun. But you've got some flexibility there. Then you've got the dreaded Malstrain Genestealer, which is movement 6, hits on freeze when close combat, 6 is at range, strength and toughness 4, 3 wounds, initiative 3, 3 attacks, leadership 7, cool 4, willpower 6, and initiative 10. It's not very smart, but it's brave. And it has the dodge, evade, nerves of steel, and rain of blows skill. So basically, if it gets into combat with you, it's going to hurt you real bad. It's also got razor sharp claws and a venomous bite, and they come with mesh armor and a bio booster. Then you've got your Malstrain Tyramite, which is basically just a flying bug. It has the dodge skill, and it has flak armor with bio booster and a stinger, but it basically has fly, which makes it super maneuverable. So the book itself is quite extensive and covers basically how to play a game of Necromunda, but also Hive Secundus. And yeah, it's actually pretty in depth. Obviously, it doesn't really cover rules for other teams yet, because they either haven't been released yet, or it's down to you to update them. But I'm sure we'll get more Necromunda gangs released for Hive Secundus as, you know, the months and years go on, as we've seen for the Ash Wastes and normal Necromunda, because the developers, as per the Warhammer community articles, have hinted we'll see new and returning gangs specifically designed for Hive Secundus. Now, Games Workshop has also given me the Ruin Zone Mortalis and the Hive Datastat Cluster. So they are 2 really cool terrain pieces. The first one, the Ruin Zone Mortalis, you actually get quite a bit. So it's £52, but inside you get basically 6 blocks, 6 pillar blocks, 3 ruin pillars, another crushed pillar, a large jam door, a small jam door, and then some more ruin terrain pieces to represent basically the hive collapsing in on itself and stuff exploding out, which isn't too much on its own. It's not enough to play with the box you get at the moment, but when you combine it with the normal Zone Mortalis terrain sprue, you actually get tons and tons of terrain. So I've got my own Zone Mortalis, which I can now combine with this to get quite an extensive board, but it's nice that it's still quite modular and compatible with a normal Zone Mortalis. So you could either just get 2 of these, so 2 of the Ruined Zone Mortalises, or just a normal one and a ruined one, depending, like, you could represent like them starting off, you know, where the hive isn't too damaged, and as the deeper they go, they get more ruined stuff. So it's a pretty good kit overall. Then for the Hive Datastat Cluster, you basically get 2 Hive Datastat Clusters, which are used in some of the missions for Hive Secundus and are a nice narrative game piece. It is £32, which is a bit pricey. I would have preferred 25, but it's nice that you get 2 of them. And, you know, even if you're not using them for Necromunda, they're actually nice, good, suitable pieces of heavy terrain. So yeah, they're actually really cool. I just wish, you know, I don't mind the Ruin Zone Mortalis being £52, but I would have liked the Datastat Cluster to be just a little bit cheaper. But otherwise, they're like both really, really nice sets of terrain. So overall, Hive Secundus is actually pretty cool. As someone who hasn't played much Necromunda, reading it again and then going through it all, it actually seems quite fairly balanced. Obviously, playing the Malstrain is kind of difficult because the main issue is unless your GM has basically allowed and modded Malstrains into different versions of Necromunda, you're kind of forced into playing to Hive Secundus. So without any sort of like adaptation at the moment, you're only really limited to 2 teams, which is the Malstrain team and then the Spyre hunters with the Van Saar. So it's kind of limited at the moment, but I'm sure it will expand as time goes on. But as a complete game itself, it's actually really, really cool. You get a lot of stuff to play with. As I said, you get 8 Van Saar, 2 Spyre hunters, the Carotid Prime, and then also you get 6 Malstrain Genestealers, 8 Hive Scum, and then you get also 4 of the Flying Bugs. You also get all the dice and templates you need to play, as well as all the cards, tokens. And yeah, it's basically a great way to jump into Necromunda if you've been tempted to, or you know, if you just wanted to add on, you've still got a lot of stuff there. Even though, you know, a lot of the core rules are repeated, you still get all the brand new stuff for playing Hive Secundus. So if you wanted to play either of these teams, you've got everything there. So I think it's really good for existing players as well as brand new players. And at £105, I think that's a really good entry point for this kind of game. My only problem with Necromunda is you have to have a gaming group to go into it with. So you need to have a friend who wants to play with this and continue it, because Necromunda is really difficult, in my opinion, as a single pickup game. It's much better as a campaign. So me and my friends are now jumping back into Necromunda for our campaign play, because we already did it when the Zone Mortalis stuff was originally released. We just never got to it because of the pandemic. So now, you know, I can either do my Corpse Grinders or my Malstrain, but I've got a friend doing Van Saar, a friend with his Escher, and then another with Dalak. So, you know, if you're able to find a group of people willing to play, and you can invest in some terrain, even though the box itself comes with a nice, you know, 2D map with 3D doors, which is, I think, the perfect middle ground that they could compromise with, because if they probably put in the terrain, it probably would have bumped the box up to like 160 quid or more. So I appreciate what they've done to get more miniatures and just enough terrain to make it playable. But if you've got even if you've got one dedicated friend who is more than happy to go all the way with you into Necromunda, I think it's great. But if you're by yourself, it's kind of hard, because you would basically have to role play. Either you play one team and then you like try and automate the enemy, which can be kind of at least a bit easier with the Malstrain Genestealers. But other than that, it's just typical Necromunda stuff. Obviously, it needs some tweaking to play, especially if you're adding in teams that aren't included yet, or want to like move the Malstrain out of Hive Secundus, representing, you know, like a probing tendril escaping to try and find more food for the cult or prospective hosts. But it's really fun. You know, I was always kind of put off by the depth and complexity of Necromunda, but it's only really there if you add it. It's just Necromunda has a rule for almost every eventuality. It's not like you're going to run into it every game. They've just got it all covered. It's just really nice when you just miss, like, even if you're out of range, you still test a fire gun because it might jam, ricocheting shots, all that kind of stuff. Burning still going on after you fired a flamer, because you've stopped firing it, it wouldn't have just stopped igniting stuff and making it blow up. So I think it's just really, really fun. And if you're tempted to switch into Necromunda, now is a great time. If you're trying to use the miniatures for something else, the Malstrain Genestealers, because they're on 40mm bases, you can actually work them in for a lot of interesting kill team proxies. Oddly enough, the Van Saar Tech Hunters can definitely, if you combine them with the normal Van Saar kill box, you can definitely make some kind of human kill team, either like really advanced Vet Guard, interesting Blooded, because you could use a Spyre Hunter as an Ogren. You've got lots of options there. The Spyre Hunters are actually really customizable as well. So you've also actually got a lot of modeling options when it comes to using these miniatures. And if you're buying the terrain, the data cluster makes a really good central terrain objective, either for open, because you get 2 of them, or even on Into the Dark, because they will fit with that confined area, which is really, really cool. So I definitely recommend it if you're interested in picking up Necromunda, or already are an existing player looking for a new challenge or new stories to tell with your game and gangs. But that's pretty much it from me today. Please remember to like and subscribe, as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of today's video. Do you like Necromunda? Or do you think, has it swayed you? Or, you know, just what do you think as maybe if you're just a regular Kill Team viewer? But remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below, an affiliate link to my Element Games, and a Patreon if you want to give me some more support, and I'll quickly shout out my patrons. So for my adepts of the crew, I have Willax, Turn Zero Gaming, Tom, Super Cow, Sam, Nick, Mr. Meatwad, Mercenary, Q, Lucas, John Thomas, Graham, Freeman Gold, Dave Meatswell, Dad of Goldens, Chris Cole, and then for my veterans of the crew, I have Samja. So thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot and helps support the channel. That's pretty much it for me today. A nice break from Necromunda, well, from Kill Team, just a short detour. I've actually built some of the miniatures. I'm going to try and get a few painted. I just didn't have the time at the moment, but it's nice to review something I don't have to then go and do a battle report for yet. Although probably once I've built up like my Malstrain team, I will probably play that and maybe record it. Maybe it's like something for patrons, you know, just as a nice refresher, because I still want to focus on Kill Team, but narrative gaming is where it's like skirmish gaming is where it is for me at the moment. And Necromunda would be a nice game I can just tech into to have fun, you know, just turn my brain off and do crazy stuff. So that's because, like, you know, 40k is just too much for me in terms of scale. Same with Age of Sigmar. But it's really nice. Had a lot of fun, actually. Gotten my Necromundan bug back. You know, figuratively speaking, I could be infected by the Malstrain. But remember, no matter what happens in the depths of Hive Secundus, there's always a chance to win and survive as long as you can roll a crit.